Hi, everybody. This is Laurie Young and Kim Solomon, and we are here today to speak to you about long distance dating. Both Kim and I have had many matches that have been long distance dating. And in fact, my own match was a long distance shidduch. I heard about my husband who lived in Seattle and I was living in New York. And I actually did not want to live in New York. And I was very interested in this guy who knew all my friends in Seattle. So my friend actually called me about him and said, this guy wants to go out with your cousin and he wants to know about her. And I said, oh, well, wow, he sounds so amazing. Hold him for me. I'm coming to meet him. He did go out with my cousin. It didn't go anywhere. But I did come to meet him, and I learned a lot through my long distance dating. And I would have to make another video because it's a very, very long story, but I'll just give you that as introduction. So most of my matches have been long distance matches. And what Kim and I want to do is share with you things that we've learned along the way to help you decide if long distance dating is for you and if you can make it work. Right, Kim?
Right.
Okay, so we're going to start out with the philosophy of long distance dating. And I do want to tell you that Kim and I have not practiced this. I sent Kim my notes and she said, Laurie, I don't agree with you on everything. And I said, that's great. Let's make our video and not discuss what Kim doesn't agree with me, because that will be more interesting and helpful to the people to get 2 points of view. So first, I'm going to talk about my philosophy, and then Kim is going to add her 2 cents. So my philosophy on long distance dating is it's backwards dating. What happens is when you go out on a date naturally with someone you met in your neighborhood or you were introduced to or you were set up with, you go and you see if you have a nice time, you go for a walk, you go to a restaurant, you do something together and you just see, do I like this person's energy? Do I like to sit across the table from them? Do I like to look into their eyes? And that's what you get to do on a real date. But with long distance dating, it's backwards. Instead of going out and having a nice time and then getting into more serious subjects later, you end up getting into more serious subjects first, because first you meet either by phone, as a phone date, which is what I usually recommend for people as a first date, is just to set up a phone date, and we'll get more into the details of that. And then do video dates. And on those video dates, you end up talking about really deep things about your religious outlook, what you like to do, what your goals and dreams are. So you do all this before you have even met in person. And then when you meet in person, that's when you get to see if you enjoy being in their company, because sometimes you meet in person down the line and the timeline of that's really important, and it can fall flat. I heard a story of a guy, girl in New York, guy in England, and he came to visit her and they had a 3-month video relationship. They were so into each other. They called each other every day, but when they met in person, it fell flat. So because of knowing that, it can go either way. And also when you go and finally meet the person, you have to be prepared that it's like a first date. Even though you think you know them so well from your phone and video chats, it can feel like a first date. You need to be prepared for that. Okay, I'll stop. I know I covered a lot, Kim. What's your response?
So, Laurie, I agree with everything you said on this point. One thing I'll add is that I think that one of the biggest factors that people are taking into account when they're trying to decide if they should continue or not is just on a very simple level. Do they enjoy speaking to that person? Do they have a nice time? Was it a pleasant experience? And when people meet in person, they can do fun activities together. They can play miniature golf. They can go bowling. They can go to an ice cream shop. They can go to a video arcade, and they can laugh together and have fun together. And that shared enjoyable experience is what actually brings about chemistry. With long distance dating, because they're communicating through Zoom, they basically need to have fun in the conversation itself. So their conversational skills come into play so much more because the other person is thinking to themselves after the Zoom chat, did I have a fun time speaking to this person on Zoom? So a person has to work even harder to be a good conversationalist because all they have is their conversational skills for the other person to think if they had a nice time on the Zoom date. So for that reason, one thing I recommend on Zoom is that people do activities on Zoom, like they can listen to a TED Talk together and then discuss what they thought about the TED Talk. There's a lot of like virtual games that they can play. They can go on virtual tours. They can do games. They can play games together on Zoom. So I think if they can make Zoom as interactive as possible, it can help build the chemistry.
Beautiful. I sometimes tell people, like on the third date, is to download some dating questions from aish.com. And that can spice up the interest of asking deeper questions without making it kind of in their face. So you get these questions that bring out a lot about the person instead of you trying to make the conversation to be very nosy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just an easier way to go deep into the person. Okay.
Right, exactly, Lori, because it's like fun, not interrogation.
Exactly. Fun is important. Oh, that's what I wanted to tell you the story of this one long distance date where I had a guy in Seattle. He was a Balchuva and a woman from Muncie, from Berthgal. And so that was an unusual shidduch that Baruch Hashem got married. And what happened was on the third date, it was a very serious conversation because they talked about religion. So they both get back to me, which I do recommend keeping the shadchan in the loop with long distance dating to help you navigate this. So the guy calls me and says, Laurie, she's so serious, right? Because they had a serious conversation. And she calls me and says, Laurie, the guy is so serious. And so I was able to tell them both, have a light conversation next. And just like Kim said, you try to enjoy each other. But yes, they had a serious topic. So they had a serious conversation, but they thought each other was such a serious personality. It almost broke up the shidduch.
Interesting. And you know what may have been happening in that case? One of them may have been setting the tone by being serious, by asking serious questions. And the other one may have just been mirroring back the tone of the other person. Because you know how when you're with someone who's kind of in a serious mood, you kind of mirror that serious mood. And if you're with someone who's in a lighthearted, fun mood, you as well, you become lighthearted and fun. So it could be they were picking up on each other's energy and they were both kind of acting very serious.
Great point. Great point. Okay, so let's talk about the timeline of long distance dating. So I find that the younger people are able to do a video chat for their first date. But if you want more kind of protection, anonymity, use the telephone for your first date. But you should set up an hour where you have no distractions, where you're not hungry for dinner, where you don't have kids in the background making noise. You set aside an hour like it's a real date. Now, I don't know if Kim agrees with the hour, but I think you need an hour, just like if you're at a coffee shop. And in fact, if you're going to do it by Zoom, you can both bring a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and you sit there and you pretend you're having a coffee date across from each other. So again, the older people, maybe older than 30, might want to have a telephone date first. And the younger people, man, they're ready to do video chat right away. That's what I find. What do you find for the first date?
That's actually one point I actually have a different view on. My personal opinion is, assuming people use Zoom, everyone should go straight to a Zoom chat and skip over the phone call. And let me explain why. I actually just think it's more efficient. If you're going to spend an hour talking to somebody, you're going to get so much more out of that hour and get to know them more if you're seeing them face to face on Zoom. So I just think you'll get clarity so much quicker. I think it's a more efficient use of your time. If you're going to be spending the hour anyway, why not look at them? It'll be easier to connect to them, easier to build chemistry. So I think everyone should go straight to a Zoom chat, assuming it's long distance. Obviously, if it's local, then there's no need to do a Zoom chat. But if it's long distance enough that they were going to have a Zoom chat before a meeting, I say skip that phone call, plan the Zoom chat through texting and go straight to that Zoom chat, you'll find out so much more information in the same amount of time. And but I do very much agree with your point that if you have that, set aside that hour to really focus, because more than once it's been that someone was talking on the phone to someone and they could hear that she was doing dishes, in the background, or, someone could hear that someone was, just doing something. And the person who was doing the dishes or doing something else, they didn't even realize that the other person can tell. And I think the other person felt they weren't a priority, that they were doing dishes. So I said to the person doing dishes, I explained this, and she said she's so sorry. She literally just didn't have the time. And I said, if you can multitask well enough that you can completely focus, because there are some things like washing dishes where you really don't need any concentration. I said it's better not to wash dishes while you're talking, but if you have no choice because you are so pressed for time, then at least mute your phone and make it seem as if you're not doing dishes while you're talking to them. But ideally, don't do the dishes while you're speaking. Obviously do your dishes, but not while you're
I just had a long distance match where the woman was taking a walk, and I think the guy was a little annoyed that that was their first date and she was walking and talking, but he dealt with it. If you're going to make the person feel like a priority, make them feel like a priority. I had another case where a woman changed the first date time twice, and he already felt very not valued. So if you make a date, make sure it's at a time that's going to work for you. And if you have to change it, give us a good reason, give the guy, the girl a good reason why you have to change the date, but try to keep that second date, because if you make the person a priority, they're going to feel like a priority. Also, don't video chat from your bed. I had a gal in her 60s who was video chatting with a guy, and he would sit in his bed, and that really discombobulated her. Like it was not classy. Also, clean up your background. You see, I put some colorful things in my background just to add some spice, but some people have backgrounds with unmade beds, dirty laundry, unmade, how do you have an unmade bed in your background? Like you're going out on a date, you're dressing up, you have to dress up your whole background. Kim, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with this last point you said. Just the other day, someone said she was on a Zoom chat with someone and his background looked really messy, and she was wondering if he was messy. Now, I said to her, I don't think messy is a flag. I really don't. I think a person can be messy and get everything done in their own way. So I don't necessarily think being messy is a flag at all. But nevertheless, it did concern her. So that is something to take into account. One thing I want to add in that you said just a little while ago, Laurie, is I actually think it's okay to walk while you're on a phone date. And I'll tell you why. I hear your point that, and I hear your point that the man's feelings were maybe hurt because he didn't feel like he was a priority. But I actually think some people can concentrate better when they're walking. I actually will call my husband a lot when I'm driving, when I'm hands-free, because I feel like that's like the time when I'm actually the most relaxed. Because if I try to talk to him while I'm not driving, I'm distracted by everything I have to do in my home. So I actually feel like my best conversations with my husband are when I'm driving or walking. So I actually think some people, when they're walking or driving, can sometimes be more calm and have good focus, assuming it's safe to be driving and talking, that your hands free and that it won't distract your concentration while driving, of course. But especially walking, I think a person can, sometimes it helps them to focus when they're walking.
Okay, we've talked about what to do while you're having these video chats. Now let's talk about how long do you video chat before you go and meet somebody? Well, I like to have excitement on both sides. I don't like anybody to fly unless both people are really into it. That they think there's real potential for marriage. And generally, because in our religion, the guy pursues the woman, he's the one looking for his missing half. Generally, the guy should go to the woman and date her in her place. And I believe that should be about, these days it's easy to buy one-way tickets. So I would just buy the one way to go there. Try to, if you can do it, budget 3 to 4 days and have regular dates those 3 to 4 days. like a 3 to 4 hour date. Don't try to spend all day with a person you just met, even if you're flying in for one date and you think, well, I need to make the most of my time. I'm going to spend 8 hours with her or him. No, you can't spend 8 hours with a stranger. Now, if you're on a 3 to 4 hour date and you're having a good time and you both want to go for another hour, go for it. There's no hard and fast rule. These are guidelines, but you want to leave the person wanting more, right? End on a high note. End on both of you want more. You need processing time after a date to think about what you went through and what you want to find out on your next date. So I think that both people, that flying should happen, or driving long distance from Baltimore to New York, perhaps around the fourth date, 3 to 4 Zoom dates. And I think somebody, if the excitement is building, then somebody should fly. What do you think, Kim?
Oh, I was typing and taking notes on because you had such good points on what to say back. So I have some points to say. I agree with a lot of what you said. I do have a few different views on a few things you said, a different opinion on a few things you said. One is you mentioned that nobody should fly unless both sides are excited. So I actually think that as long as the person who is the one flying feels it's worth their time and they're aware of where the other party is holding, it's okay if they're not both excited. And let me explain what I mean. Let's just say Chaim and Sarah are dating. And Chaim wants to fly to Sarah, and he's much more excited about the match than Sarah. In my opinion, I still think it's okay for Chaim to fly, even if Sarah is not that excited, as long as Sarah is honest with Chaim and says something like, I think you're a really great person. My feelings aren't yet as strong as yours are, but I would still like to meet to see if my feelings can develop. So she's being honest and upfront that her feelings are not as strong as his are. And then it's basically informed consent. Now he knows that he's more excited than she is, and now he can make an educated decision on if it's worth him flying. So as long as no one is being misled, and as long as the person who's flying still wants to fly, I actually think it's okay. As long as no one's being misled and everyone's being upfront. And there's nice ways to tell the more interested party that the less interested party isn't as interested.
Just
so
not sure.
They think they're a great person. They're not yet, their feelings aren't yet as strong as they'd like for them to be, but they'd like to give it a chance to see if their feelings grow. There's nice ways to say it, but I think as long as the person who's flying is aware that their feelings are a little bit stronger, I think it's okay for them to still fly. We could actually have a whole conversation about this next point because it's too long to go into, but I think sometimes it's the woman can fly out first, and we can maybe we can make a whole video on that. I know you mentioned about the man.
With the woman flying out first, I've had the guy send the woman money for the ticket. They have to both agree on splitting expenses, either, who's going to pay for the hotel if there's a hotel, if they're not staying with somebody. All these things are up for negotiation, and your matchmaker can help with that if you keep the matchmaker in the loop. And also, one of my shidduchim, where both the guy and the gal were on modest budgets, the gal ended up flying to the guy first, and they split the ticket for the first travel. So there's no hard and fast rules, but this is a great time for communication, because that's what relationships are all about: negotiation, communication, figuring out who's going to pay for the ticket, the hotel, car rental, the dates. Don't make assumptions. There's no hard and fast rules, but what do you think, Kim?
Depends on the hashkafa of the people and their age as well. Their ages and how long they've been dating for. For some people who are very new at dating, I think it might be too much for them to negotiate all the logistics. If a girl's 19 years old to then have to discuss directly with the guy, do we split the ticket or what? I think it's just gonna be too much for her.
For a 19-year-old girl.
So I think it's a case-by-case basis. As to who should fly out first, I think it's also a case-by-case basis. Maybe we can make a video on when, who to fly out, who should fly out first and in what cases. But that's a very long
They
conversation.
can contact us. We're happy to help in these cases.
Some other things I just wanted to quickly say, just in response to what you said, I think you mentioned something about the call should only be the date should be a certain length of time, or the phone call should be a certain length of time. So here's my concern about that. Just the other day, a woman told me that she was advised that the first call shouldn't be more than like an hour or an hour and a half. So the call was going really well. And then after it was like an hour and a half, she said she had to go because she was trained that it's not supposed to be that long. And I think that made him feel that she wasn't so interested in him that she ended the call. So I think that if the call is going really well, to purposely end it at a certain point just because that's protocol could really hurt the chemistry. What people could do instead.
What this woman should have said is, hey, my matchmaker told me that I should keep the first call to an hour and a half. She should say that, we had a great first phone call. Let's go another 10 minutes and then let's end, so that, I'm aligned with the way I think dating should go, something like that.
Exactly. You know what, Laurie? It's so important. This is what I told her. Whenever you're saying or doing something that may be perceived as even the smallest form of rejection, you want to counter that with positivity. So in this case, the woman could say, I'm really having a nice time speaking to you. I hope to hear from you again. So that will counter what may be perceived as a rejection that she wanted to end the call. The reason I was kind of laughing when you were telling me that is on the first date I had with my husband, I think he was also advised, keep the date an hour and a half. So on our first date, he looked at his watch. And you know what he said to me? It was such a nice thing he said to me. He said, it's an hour and a half and I've been advised that the first date should be an hour and a half, but I'm having a nice time. So, if you want to end things, I understand, but I'm good to continue, which I thought was so nice. And so I said, I would love to continue our date. So he basically, what was good about this is that he gave me an out. If I thought it had been too long, he gave me an opportunity. I could have said, actually, yeah, maybe we should end it now, but I didn't. I said, I want to continue. So someone can just check in after an hour and a half. So for example, usually it's the man, the one who kind of ends that, date or phone call, especially when it's in the beginning stages. Once the relationship's more secure, then it's not so clear that the man always has to end it. They can take turns, anything. But in the beginning, the protocol usually is the man ends the phone call or date. So he can always just say to the woman, it's been an hour and a half. In case you're tired or in case you have things to go, we can end things now, but I want to let you know I'm having a nice time. And, I'd be happy to speak longer or speak another time. That way she feels that he's not ending the call because he's not enjoying the phone call or date.
Okay. So I think people need to be prepared at this point that long distance dating is tougher. But, the rewards can be great. And the timeline is going to be different. It's going to take time of trying to see each other on regular occasions, flying, she flies, he flies, whatever. What I did in my own shidduch is I ended up moving to Seattle. Okay, so I met my husband in October, Sukkot time. And then we saw each other a few days in January, a few days in February. I came for half of Pesach. And then I came for the summer, and we were engaged by the end of the summer. And I moved to Seattle for 3 months. Now, I was at a point in my life where I could take a break from what I was doing in my professional world and move. I will admit I had a support system in Seattle. I knew lots of people, and my future husband and I had the same friends. So it was very easy for me to move to Seattle. It was wonderful, especially not having to spend the summer in New York where it's so humid. Okay, so, by the end of the summer, because I call long distance dating can be fairy tale dating. You fly into town, you make time in your schedule, everything's wonderful, but there's no day-to-day interaction kind of thing. So if it's possible to do something like that, it's ideal. Even if you can go and spend 2 weeks, it makes a difference rather than just flying in for 3 days and dating 3 times. It's just more natural. It's more day to day, trying to fit you in with the schedule. Now, also the person who flies in needs to be cognizant that the person in their own city still has a life. They still have to do laundry. They still have to go to work. They're still busy. And that's why they can probably only see you 3 to 4 hours a day, unless you have a Sunday where you can spend longer together. Also, don't come for Shabbos for your first encounter. Don't try to meet somebody over Shabbos, like Friday night with other people at the table, and you're meeting them for the first time on Shabbos. Shabbos is not for your first visit. Kim, your thoughts on that?
I think it depends. I think it depends. Many women don't want to. Many women don't want to have a date on Shabbos because they're not being able to apply makeup. So for that reason, men, I really want you to understand this, because men often don't realize this, understandably, but for a man, it makes no difference. But women, they want to be able to apply makeup. And if they're from, they can't on Shabbos. So just be aware of that. But on the other hand, one of the advantages of a Shabbos table is you can see someone in a more natural environment. Also, people have the most free time on Shabbos. So sometimes Shabbos is a good time to date because they have, a huge chunk of free time. People tend to be more relaxed on Shabbos, less, rushed, less pressured. So I think it depends. In certain circles, it would not be done for a first date to be on Shabbos, because in certain circles, it's people don't want it to be public who they're dating so soon. So it depends on the circles they're in. Some people who date in a little bit more of a relaxed, informal way, they wouldn't mind having a first date on Shabbos. But for those who are a little bit more formal daters, for them, they may not want everyone in the community to know that they're dating that person. So the bottom line is, I think it's a case by case basis. And it's a little tricky because one side could be fine having a Shabbos date, whereas the other side might prefer not to. So obviously it could only work if they're both comfortable doing that. But I think it depends on, the circles they're in, their hashkafa, their comfort level.
Well, I'm going to tell you why I don't think Shabbos is a good time for a first date. Because generally Shabbos is not alone. You're not going to have Friday night together alone. You're not going to have Shabbos lunch together alone. You can take a walk alone.
Right. True.
You don't want to show up in shul and everybody say, "Oh, hello, why are you here? Oh, I'm dating this guy. You just met this guy." That's not a good thing. And you don't want people around. You don't want parents around when you're meeting someone for the first time. It should be just the two of you. And that's why I don't think Shabbos is a good time. Down the line, when you have a relationship, and let's talk about a little bit about having a relationship and texting. You have to decide when you start texting, and until you meet the person, you have to match texting lifestyles, and you don't want to text too soon, too often before you really have a relationship. I know this is off topic. Maybe we shouldn't go there, Kim, but your 2 cents on texting.
I actually have so much to say on texting. So a few points I'll say is, one is, I think texting is good to plan things, or to, like, for example, texting is good to say, can we schedule a time to talk? Or is it too late for me to call you now? But I don't think texting is good for sharing thoughts and feelings. I think a phone call or video date, or ideally in person, is better to share thoughts and feelings. So I don't think texting should be used as a way to connect. It's more just for practical purposes of planning and things like that. I've seen so many relationships fail because of differences in texting etiquette. Haven't you, Laurie? Like, for example, Some people are glued to their phone. They have their phone next to them all the time and they're immediate responders. They'll stop what they're doing to text. Other people like myself, by the way, I don't always have my phone in the same room that I'm in. I have my texting notifications sound off, so I don't even hear when I get a text. I might not see a text for a few hours later. So some people, they treat texting like emailing. They're not by their phone all the time. And when they respond to a text, they don't glance at their phone immediately to see if that person responded. They kind of say, I'll share my response when I look at my phone next. It's kind of like, you know what, I'll just give an example. Remember back in the day, AOL Instant Messenger. Do you remember that, Laurie?
Yeah.
Right? AOL Instant Messenger. Was that from the 90s or early 2000s? I forgot when. But back in the day, there was AOL Instant Messenger, and people were in instant, like ICQ as well. Remember all these programs? With AOL Instant Messenger, people were in immediate communication with each other, and they were expecting an immediate back and forth. But with texting, not everyone, treats it like AOL Instant Messenger. And some people, by the way, they're working, and so they have their phone turned off. They have their phone on silent. So sometimes people, I hear this a lot. You probably hear this too, Laurie. Well, someone will say, I texted them, I didn't hear back for 6 hours later, and the other person, they were working and they weren't supposed to be on their phone while they were working. And that person thought that they weren't prioritizing them, but it's really just that they couldn't respond.
They have different styles and they couldn't. I have seen one guy shoot himself in the foot for 4 different shidduchim because he is an instant texter and expects people to answer him right away. And he knows if they saw his message, and if they don't answer right away, he's upset. And I say, well, you know what? I respect people who don't answer right away. They have a life. They have something going on in their life, and they're busy, and they put their texting time at a certain time when they return texts. And so I saw how many unsent texts he sends me. So this guy, his fingers are way too busy. So anyway, we'll do another video on text.
One more last thing about losing thought, literally 30 more seconds. I think people should turn off the read receipts on their text messaging on WhatsApp. I do that for myself because sometimes I only return my messages in like 1 or 2 batches, not as I see them. So I turn off my read receipts because I don't want people to think that they're not a priority to me. It's just my style. But one last thing I want to add is, despite what we're saying about some people, they have, people can't always prioritize responding to text messages and WhatsApp. I do think if you're dating someone, they should be more of a priority to you than other people in your life. So you should put them as a higher priority. So in other words, if a friend of yours, you wait till the next day to text them back, I think that could be too long for someone you're dating. So I do think you want to give somewhat more of a priority to the person you're dating than to other people.
That's really beautiful. Okay. The last point is momentum dating, at least for the beginning. I know I've made quite a few videos on momentum dating, but 3 dates within 10 days, Eliza Ben Shalom taught us this. You have to have momentum in dating bichlal. You have the first phone date, you set up the next one for as soon as you can, a couple days later, but not the next day, but 2 days later, give processing time. And the third date within 10 days. And it goes the same for long distance dating or real life dating. And Kim, do you have any thoughts on that?
The only thing that I will add, and I know that I might have misread your notes. Do you believe that people should always have 3 dates or no? I just wanted to talk about that.
Right, so we've talked about that a little bit. Try not to say no to someone on the first date unless you're totally repulsed. Give people a chance. Not everybody is their best on the first date. And 1 or 2 dates, if you can make it to 3 and then decide yes or no, it just takes a whole burden off people. If they have an expectation, I'm going to have 3 chances to be with this person. Lori Palatnik didn't like her husband till the 3rd date. So if you give people a chance to relax and start being themselves, not everybody is a natural speaker. Not everybody gets comfortable on the first date. What do you think, Kim?
So with the exception of the one what I'm about to say, does an exception to if somebody flew in to see someone. If someone flew in to see someone, there is a general expectation they'll give them more than one, that there'll be more than one date, unless both people mutually, don't want to continue and it's clear. But when someone flies in out of courtesy to the person who traveled, it is good to give them a second date. I think that is recommended,
I'm
unless
so glad you brought that up.
that's a little different when it's someone flew in. I think it's even more important, just out of courtesy, for the person who spent all this money and took off work. The only thing that I'm hesitant, that I'm not sure I agree with, is sometimes people, as like a shita, they say that you have to go on 2 dates, you have to go on 3 dates. I don't agree with that, because I think that sometimes a person is sure after 1 date. Obviously, if it's a maybe, even if it's close to a no, but it's still in that maybe range, it's good to go out again. But when a person is completely certain, I'm nervous it's going to encourage burnout if we push them to always have to go on a second or third date when it's crystal clear to them that it's not.
Sure, if it's crystal clear, it's fine. But when in doubt, keep going out. And if you can give the person a chance, give them a chance.
Correct.
Okay, so I did have a guy, was not my shidduch. He flew from LA to Miami to meet this woman, and she was from another state, and they both flew to Miami. She gave him 1 dinner date, and she did not see him again. And he was expecting to see her, for a few days. And that was really hurtful. Then I know another LA guy who flew to Miami recently, and she gave him 1.5 dates and just called it off. And it was really hard for him. At least it was a half a date, the second date. But
can I just say one point on this? See, I think it's nice to at least give a second courtesy date when someone flew out, assuming they're interested. However, I kind of see both sides, and let me tell you why. I see both perspectives, and I'll tell you why. On one hand, it is courteous, especially when it's courteous when someone flew out to see you to give them a second date, and it's hurtful if they don't get a second date. But so on one hand, I do see that, but I kind of see the other hand, Laurie, that let's just say the person is sure that it's not shayach. By ending it, you're giving that person an opportunity to meet other people. So in other words, if you're just going on a second date just out of courtesy, that could be but you're certain that person is not for you, and you're only going out again for courtesy, then that could have prevented that person from accepting another shach date with someone who could be a real potential. So that's why I see both sides. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Okay. Last words, Kim. Do you have anything else to add? I think we got to end this video. It's going on a long time.
Oh, wow. About anything to say about any particular point or just in general?
General long distance dating. I think we gave enough to chew on for today.
I'll think of some very quick points. As I mentioned earlier on this video, because so much of people's decision is if they enjoyed the date with you or enjoyed the phone call, it's really important to learn how to be a great conversationalist. And I think anyone can learn how to do this. Even people who are naturally quiet or introverted. There's so many free videos on YouTube and so many books on how to be a great conversationalist. You can practice in front of Zoom, practice talking to yourself and ask yourself, am I interesting to talk to? Am I engaging? Ask honest friends and tell them, please be honest with me. It's a chesed. Am I interesting to speak to? How can I be a more interesting conversationalist? Now, on the other hand, and I've said this on many videos, even though on one hand, we are trying to encourage people to be as good of a conversationalist as possible, because we know that people are making their decision based a lot on chemistry. On the other hand, I do want to emphasize to still try to give people a fair chance, even if they're not the greatest conversationalists, because, and I use this analogy in other videos, so I'm sorry if you've already heard this, but just imagine a person who goes in for a job interview. Sometimes they can do a great job because they speak well off the cuff. They have a lot of charisma. they're a great speaker, but they may not be a great employee. And conversely, you could have somebody who, they get a little shy, a little tongue-tied. They don't speak so well off the cuff. They get nervous when they're being interviewed. So they don't do so well in the interview, but they could be an amazing employee. So too, we want to encourage you to keep in mind that sometimes a person can be fun to date, but not the best spouse for you. So you want to take that into account as well. So anything you want to add to that point, Laurie?
Nope. I think it was great. And I think we better end this video. I want you to know that Kim and I are both not only matchmakers, but we're dating coaches, and we are available by the hour for coaching through relationships, even if you have a shit off through another matchmaker. We do dating coaching by the hour, and we're happy to. You can contact either one of us. You can contact me through my website, seattleshotgun.com. And Kim, how would you like people to get a hold of you?
They can just email me. Maybe we could put our contact information when we post the video.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? One last thing I want to say, that way they don't have to write this down. It'll be there in front of them on the when we post the video on YouTube. One more thing I want to say is Laurie and we co-host a lot of events for singles on Zoom. So I just want to quickly tell you about that if you're not aware of that. To look for our upcoming events, just go to sawyouatsinai.com/events, and please keep checking because more events keep getting added in the future.
Yes, and that's why we're making this video, because we make a lot of long distance matches through these events, and we hope this video will be valuable to you. In fact, we had a shit off between Kentucky and New York that just got married last month. So, all right, Kim, thank you. You're such a pleasure to be with.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.